Welcome back. Nigeria plans to borrow 2.36 billion naira to finance its 2017 budget deficit. Now, the Debt Management Office is asking the public to come to terms with the proposal. Justifying the aims of the domestic and external borrowings in Lagos, the Director General of the agency, Dr. Abraham Wankwo, explains that Nigeria's debt burden is enormous but necessary.
I want once more to thank you very much for the keen interest you'll be taking in the developments in public debt management, developments in the economy in general, for your contributions, and to assure you that we want to encourage you to continue being very keen on issues of public debt management, on the issue of the economy in general, and on the issue of the challenge of economic growth and recovery, which is the challenge of our life. For those of us who are adults in this era, I believe our success and failure, individually and collectively, by the next generation, will be judged by did we succeed in dealing with this situation successfully, effectively, so that it be on record that our country faced a peculiar challenge in our era, and we're able to surmount it in a very successful, effective way, in a permanent and sustainable way. That's the challenge of our life, and I believe we can stand up to that challenge as a group, as Nigerians. So once more, let me thank you very much for the support we're giving, and to encourage you to continue to be interested in issues relating to public debt management in Nigeria, issues related to the economy in general. As you know, as we try to get out of the woods, certainly the job of public debt management gets more and more difficult. For an economy that has been used to high growth in the past of over a decade, for an economy that had a source of revenue that had influenced us in terms of our consumption and investment, our social programs, and for that major source of income or revenue to collapse drastically by more than 60%. Puts a bigger burden. It puts a burden on everybody in the society, but to be frank with you, it puts a greater burden on the public debt manager. Because invariably, when your revenues, whether as an individual, family, as a company, or as a country, if your revenue falls, one of the most appealing alternatives or options for you is to look into debt. But to take a debt is not as easy as that. You have to. It requires a lot of thinking, a lot of planning, a lot of strategizing as to how will you use the process or that to solve your problem and be able to repair, and more importantly, how it can help you to build self-sustainability so that you don't come back to the same type of challenge that led you in the first instance to think in terms of mass borrowing. But let me not go deeply into the issue of borrowing, whether we should borrow or not, or how we should borrow or not. Indeed, let me close my comments by emphasizing that what all of us should be focusing on is being able to establish the minimum amount of resources we need to get out of the woods. And as much as possible, let's put our thinkings together and mobilize the resources we need from the most appealing sources, from the most attractive sources. It doesn't need to be debt. If we can think out the sources of revenue that can help us to meet our obligations, of course, that should be our first option. And so, even though, as I said, our focus this morning is not to talk about that, but let me emphasize that for any country, for any village, for any society, for any family, the focus should be, as much as possible, how can you use revenue, whether existing or new sources, to solve their problem. That should be the first line of defense. It's only after you have exhausted that to the maximum you can look at other options. Okay? So, but the focus for all of us should be whatever we can do to make sure that in a relatively short time we get out of recession, we turn around the economy, and we set ourselves on a path of sustainable growth. In my view, that path of sustainable growth should entail that we have diversified our economy in such a way that we have several sources of earning foreign exchange. That should be one of the indicators. It should be such that we have also replaced the things we import which we can produce domestically, whether it's food or clothing or raw materials for industries, and for which we can develop domestic alternatives. I believe from the external source, if we diversify our exports into several items, several products, processed, semi-processed and fully processed, if we can replace as many of the things we import as possible, whether clothing, whether food or raw materials,